Alright everyone, how are we doing? This is Matt here on the Vinyl Head UK channel. And once again, I reckon it is time to do another vinyl appreciation video. So right here in front of me, I have an album that many would call the greatest rock album ever made. Some would go as far as to say it's the greatest album ever made. Out of all the genres and all the artists and bands out there, the greatest record ever made. What do you guys think? Let me know. But here we have in front of me the masterpiece that is Led Zeppelin 4. Or the untitled album, if you will. We will go with Led Zeppelin 4 for the purposes of this video. And there we have it. Originally released in November of 1971. But this one in front of me is a 2014 remastered reissue. It's a European pressing. It's 180 gram. And it's a nice gatefold as well. So, the fourth album the Zeppelin ever put out. The clue's obviously in the title there with Led Zeppelin 4. The third record they put out was kind of, the critics weren't all for it. So they went away. They cancelled touring for a while. They got some offers, which they didn't take. And they focused instead of making this incredible record in front of me here. So, let's go with the title to start with. It doesn't really have one. I know we call it Led Zeppelin 4 or Untitled, but it doesn't have a title on it. There's nothing on the artwork at all. There's not even track listing on the back. Now, this is something that the record company didn't like. It is by Atlantic Records. Which it does focus on the record itself. It does say on the record there itself. So it was, Atlantic weren't very happy at all. Incredibly unhappy by the fact that Jimmy Page didn't want to have an album title or a track listing. In the end, Led Zeppelin, or specifically Jimmy Page, wouldn't give over the master tapes to Atlantic until they agreed that they could go ahead and call it Untitled, or just not have a title to the record and not even have that track listing on the back. So there's a bit of history to it. It was produced by Jimmy Page, who, you know, despite being a guitarist, is probably up there when you listen to this as one of the greatest producers out there. Flawless, absolutely flawless. But let's have a little look. So as I say, we have no title, we have no track listing. We'll show you the artwork. I'm not big on what the context of the artwork is. So if you know if there's a story behind it, drop it into the comments. I always like to learn. But where we have this man who's collecting his tree branches there. As I say, it is 2014 remastered reissue. We have it down here. Led Zeppelin's classic fourth album on 180 gram. Includes Stairway To Heaven, Black Dog and Rock and Roll. And remastered and produced by Jimmy Page. So he had a hand in the remastering process as well. The back there is a kind of extends over from the front a little bit. There we have a tower block, an inner city sort of feel maybe somewhere, and then a nice little Led Zeppelin shiny sticker right down there. As I say, it is a gatefold, so let's open it up and take a look. I'm gonna hold it up like that so you guys can see. Just about fits in. Let's hold it back a little bit. This statue, or maybe not a statue, a person stood up. It's like Gandalf up there looking down on this town. Again, if you know the story behind it, let me know. I don't know masses about the story behind the artwork. And then it is 180 gram. It's on a simple paper sleeve. I'm going to be very delicate with it because it's a masterpiece. And there we have it. They've gone with the original Atlantic stuff on the record itself. We can see the green and the orange stereo. We have our track listing. We have Led Zeppelin. Also, we have the 4 cymbals. They are quite famous. Let me show you side 2. It is exactly the same, just obviously with the second side track listing there. So each one of the band members, slide it in so you can hear me. Each one of the band members came up with a logo that they used instead of a title. And there we have them on the record itself. We can see them lined up under the Atlantic logo there. And as I say, each band member had a logo. They then transponded into the live setting. For example, John Bonham having the logo on his kick drum. And that was used instead of an actual title. And they obviously became quite synonymous with the band itself. But who is Led Zeppelin? I'm sure I am preaching to the choir here. I'm sure you're all fully aware of who Led Zeppelin is. But for those who might not know, who have stumbled across this video, Robert Plant on vocals, Jimmy Page on guitar, among other things, John Paul Jones on bass guitar. He also played synthesizers and keyboards. And then John Bonham, who unfortunately is no longer with us, on drums. And that makes up Led Zeppelin. There wasn't ever any lineup changes with Led Zeppelin. That was the 4 of them. The only difference being when John sadly passed away and Led Zeppelin reformed, which I think must have been, let me get my date, it must have been about 2010, I'm going to say. Around that era. Maybe it was a little bit before. Maybe it was. Maybe it could have been anywhere between 2007 and 2010. It was in that region. I can't remember my date off the top of my head. But they reformed. They did, I think it was 2 nights maybe at the O2 down in London. And the only difference was Jason Bonham coming in and filling in for his dad on drums. So still a Bonham on drums, albeit not John. And that is Led Zeppelin. So, track listing. On the, I can't read it off it because as I say, there is no track listing. So, the first side we have Black Dog. Then we have Rock and Roll. The Battle of Evermore. And then we close with the iconic Stairway to Heaven. Flip it over onto the second side. We have Misty Mountain Hop. 4 Sticks, Going to California, and then When the Levee Breaks. And that makes up this iconic record. I'm not, as I stress in all my videos, going to review it because like some of the classic albums I've looked at, Iron Maiden, Kill 'Em All, Black Sabbath, they've probably been reviewed by far better people than me when it comes to reviewing. All your music journalists and the internet, because the internet knows everything, supposedly. Everyone's reviewed it. I'm not going to review it. I'm going to talk about the tracks so you get a feel for it and talk about the record as per normal. So we start with Black Dog. Let me explain as well before we go into the tracks. This was recorded in a country house in Hampshire called Headley Grange. I think the band were looking for places to record. I believe they were in a studio and next door were Jethro Tull, who were in the middle of recording Aqualung. So I don't think that really worked for the band. I believe Mick Jagger, I think, offered out a studio, but it was too expensive. And finally, they settled in this big old country house in Hampshire, which I think played a very pivotal role in the sound, which we'll get onto as we go. So, going back to our tracks, Black Dog opens up the record. It was actually named after a black dog which used to hang around the country house itself. Now, this in part was actually inspired by the track Oh Well by Fleetwood Mac, and it's got that lovely 4/4 time, which is set on a 4/5 time. So if you're into music and you know your music, you'll probably understand the time signature, what that means. But it's how to describe it. It's not a lazy song, but it's got that lazy-ish playing to it on the drums at point, which is kind of hard to describe if you don't play music or whatnot. But hopefully some of you will kind of grasp what that means. Rock and Roll. This was actually inspired by Little Richard track. So they were in the studio and they started jamming, and John Bonham started sort of playing this beat along to a Little Richard track. Jimmy Page then put a riff of his own on top of it, and that's kind of how Rock and Roll was inspired. It also features Ian Stewart, who I believe was with the Rolling Stones, and he features on piano through that one as well. I mean, what a 1-2 to open. Real slabs of rock. We know Led Zeppelin went quite folky at times and had acoustic instrumental pieces and whatnot, but real solid 2 slabs of rock, hard rock. You know, there's a lot of influence come from Zeppelin from a lot of different genres and subgenres. Some people argue that the start of even sort of folky rock and metal kind of came from Zeppelin, and some of the stuff they were doing, they were using recorders, which of course we'll come on to in a moment, and various instruments like that. So a lot of influence was drawn, and of course obviously modern day hard rock and rock bands have drawn a lot of influence as well. Greta Van Fleet, we're not going to mention them, just did. But yeah, lots of bands out there who have drawn huge influence by just how there's such a mix of styles within Zeppelin's music. Like I say, that hard rock stuff like Rock and Roll and Black Dog, and then your folky passages and your acoustic passages, and then just all out sonic beautifulness, which we'll go on to. The Battle of Evermore, which was initially written on a mandolin by Jimmy Page. It was a mandolin that John Paul Jones had. Jimmy Page took it and wrote this song. It's actually inspired by a book that Robert Plant was reading at the time, which focused on Scottish independence wars. So quite interesting. And this also features a guest musician, which is Sandy Denny, who was with Fleetwood Mac. And not only is she the only female, she's the only person, full stop, to actually feature vocally on any of Led Zeppelin's material other than the band themselves. So that's quite an interesting little fact for you. But then we get on to a song that obviously needs no introduction, Stairway to Heaven. Just like this record is described as one of the, if not the greatest record made, many would argue that Stairway to Heaven is the greatest rock song ever made, and maybe to some, the greatest song full stop ever made. It's about a woman who took everything without giving anything back. That is the sort of the lyrical content, I guess, to it. The solo was actually played by Jimmy Page on a Fender Telecaster that was given to him by Jeff Beck, and he did 3 takes for the solo through this song and then just use the best one. So just 3, that's not bad considering how intricate and how good this solo really is. And then obviously we've got that, I talked about recorder, we've got that recorder intro at the start. So there's that folky side to it as well, but just John Bonham coming in with the drums about 4.5 minutes through, and it's epic. There's no other way. I'm sure everybody's heard or given their 2 cents as to Stairway to Heaven. It's just amazing, an amazing track. We flip it over onto Misty Mountain Hop, which actually the title was inspired by The Hobbit. And then 4 Sticks, which that one got its title from John Bonham actually playing the track with 4 drumsticks. As simple as that, you know, a band as revered as Led Zeppelin, it's just such a simple little thing like that. Just he played with 4 sticks. Hey, we're going to call it 4 Sticks. That one was a little bit trickier to record. It took multiple takes. I believe they only ever played it once live as well, due to the complex nature of the track and layering and everything else that they did. It only received 1 live airplay with that one. Going to California follows, which interestingly was about finding the perfect woman and also the Californian earthquake. So kind of 2 very different contrasts put together to form lyrical content with that one. And it was actually inspired by Joni Mitchell, who Robert Plant and Jimmy Page were big fans of. And then we jump on to When the Levee Breaks. Now, if you want to hear the biggest drum sound you'll ever hear, put this track on. So the drums were actually recorded in the lobby of this country house with 2 mics that were hung from a stairwell, and it just created this huge, monstrous drum sound. Absolutely massive it sounds. I think Jimmy Page initially recorded it maybe for a prior album or maybe earlier in this recording process, and he felt it kind of sounded flat. That's where the idea came in about doing it in a lobby, big room, get these mics hanging down, get that huge vast sound that the lobby created with these drums. And that's, you know, and it's worked. I've never heard drums sound so massive on a record. All this sort of overproduced stuff, you know, I listen to, obviously, as you know, to a lot of rock and metal and whatnot, and it's very overproduced in some cases and compressed, and the drums, you know, especially on some of the real heavy, sort of going towards the death metal side, it sounds very what's the word, I guess, kind of, it doesn't even sound like drums sometimes. I mean, they're so intricate and the music's so intricate, it's almost like a drum machine at times, whereas this just sounds so natural and raw, and it's got that sort of, again, not in a negative way, but that lazy playing where it just sounds so relaxed, but just sounds huge. Just absolutely massive. It's a cover of a Memphis Minnie and Kansas Joe McCoy track as well. So it's the only cover on this record. It's the only non-Led Zeppelin written track. And I love it. I think Robert Plant's vocals they sound phenomenal throughout. Obviously we know he's an insane vocalist, but his vocals on this just sound so good, and it's such a great track to end. It's just one to just sit and nod your head and just sit back and enjoy. Love it. So how does it sound, this 2014 remastered reissue? Well, as you can probably gather, it sounds amazing. Absolutely amazing. I did my research on this one. I went and had a look on a lot of different sites and whatnot, see what people were saying. And a lot of people other than that first initial pressing, was saying that this is one of the best. So I had to get it. It was found in a record store back down in the Midlands by my dad. Managed to pick it up for me and brought it up when they visited, and we stuck it on, and it was huge. It was huge coming out those speakers. The acoustic moments where it's just Robert Plant and just the sort of acousticy, softer instrumental passages, it sounded like he was in the room, just singing there to the side, singing, doing his thing. It sounded massive. That huge drum sound on When the Levee Breaks, again, it's like he was playing in the room, John Bonham. It really felt it. That recorder as well. It took me back to my school lessons where we all had recorders. We all had to try and play. We filled them with spit because that's what happened. So a lot better than we ever got. But it was that lovely noise. It just floated around the room as it came through the speakers. You could have easily been sat next to them playing that. It just sounds perfect. Jimmy Page has done such a phenomenal job on the production on this. A grandiose guitar player and an incredible producer to bat as well. And I cannot fault it. It's up there on one of the best sounding records I have so far. My collection will grow. There might be some records that challenges that, but it's in a steady spot right now. It sounds absolutely brilliant. It's a masterpiece of an album. And the production and the cut is a masterpiece as well. Go and check it out. If you're a rock fan, if you're a hard rock fan, hell, even if you're a metal fan or a folk fan, you need to get this album. It should be a staple of your collection. Okay, so Led Zeppelin 4 or Led Zeppelin Untitled. Go and find it. The 2014 remastered reissue edition. It's not overly expensive. And it sounds beautiful. It really, really does. This was a band in their prime. And it shows on this record. There are tracks like Stairway to Heaven, which you need to sound as good as they sound coming through my speakers on this pressing right here. So, another record covered. Remember to go and subscribe. Loads of content on the channel, not just vinyl content. There's memory videos of festivals. There's all sorts. I've got a few more ideas in the pipeline, so go and hit subscribe. Smash the hell out of that like button. Press the bell for all notifications for when content goes up. And as always, go and buy vinyl. Go and listen to vinyl. Go and find Led Zeppelin 4. Put it on. Turn it up. It won't disappoint. I'll see you next time.